Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Psychonaut Sessions. It is Thursday, which means often we're doing an Ultraverse comic series with my buddy here, Aaron Conway, but it's Halloween today. Woo! So we're doing something completely different. As anybody who's been following us on Thursdays knows, we're following Ultraverse in a chronological order, but Halloween came up. We weren't really hitting anything Ultraverse-wise that was Halloween-centric. So we wanted to do something a little different today. So we're going to do kind of a film review of one of our favorites, The Abominable Dr. Phibes.
Fanfare.
Yeah, and we're all ready for Halloween. Aaron and I, this is one of our things that bonds us as human beings, is the love for this, the greatest holiday of the entire year.
Not even a contest.
No. And I applaud you on your makeup job, sir. You look fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Again, the top hat cape combo.
I was kind of going for a Phibes thing, with what I had pieced together of things. So
sure,
we'll see if it works. I mean, he never wore a top hat, but I could see Phibes pulling one off.
True. You just needed the little voice thing to plug in.
That's what I should have done for this whole episode, is have something to plug in, and I just dub in all of it. You just talk about yourself.
That'd have been awesome.
And then I would just dub in my voice later.
Voiceover later. Make it sound metallic.
That's way more editing than I want to even take time to do. Okay. So let me start. For those that don't know anything about the Abominable Dr. Phibes, I'm going to just read a real quick synopsis, and we'll kind of get into things a little bit. You cool with that?
Yep, let's do it. Shame on them for not knowing, but I get it.
Yeah, well, they're gonna get all kind, because I'm gonna pour in the organ sequence and other clips throughout this, so they'll get to know the concept a little bit. Here's a synopsis. In a desperate attempt to reach his ill wife, organist Anton Phibes, played by the venerable Vincent Price, is horrifically disfigured in a car accident and presumed dead. When he learns that his wife died during an operation, Phibes blames her surgeons and plots an elaborate revenge to punish them for their incompetence. With the help of a mute assistant, who's played by Virginia North, Phibes creates a mask resembling his own face and murders the surgeons one by one using bizarre methods inspired by the biblical plagues. 1971, folks, 1971. This was directed by Robert Foist. It was put out by American International Pictures, which put out such wonderful hits as Beach Party. So just putting that out there.
Right.
It did garner a sequel, but definitely this was a film that when it first came out, I don't think American International or just audiences in general really knew what to do with it. It's really gained its success through a cult following over the years.
Right. Well, and it hit. Yeah, I mean, they didn't even play up the horror much, from what I understand, when it hit, and it wasn't until a re-release, as when they played up the horror, that it did do better. But yeah, it didn't get the numbers that they wanted either time.
Well, and it was one of those things where people, especially with Vincent Price, people were expecting something that was going to be horror or just scary or have that tone, and it was even marketed that way in many ways, with a lot of the initial movie posters and whatnot, and then seeing how weirdly comedic it was and just quirky, people were what is this?
Yeah. Well, see, my understanding was it was the reverse, because I mean the opening poster is even a riff on Love Story, because it's love means never having to say you're sorry was Love Stories. And the original poster for Phibes was love means never having to be ugly or say you're ugly or something like that. I can't remember. And he's about to kiss a beautiful woman, and so my understanding was that it was they played up the comedy angle more than the horror angle and flipped it on re-release. But either way, it did not do what they wanted when it came out.
Yeah. So let's go through some initial thoughts here. How were you introduced to Phibes, Aaron? How was Phibes brought to little Aaron Conaway as a 5-year-old watching Skinamax
So
late?
it wasn't actually this Phibes. Vincent Price was. Vincent Price I've been a fan for my whole life, but Phibes actually didn't hit my radar until maybe 25 years ago. Um, our buddy Hoyt actually gave me a copy of the DVD, and it quickly became. I mean, I sometimes say it's my favorite. It kind of goes back and forth with House on Haunted Hill, but Phibes I generally consider my favorite now. But then, yeah, once he gave me that, I just started proselytizing this movie. I started showing everybody I knew this movie that hadn't seen it.
That's exactly where I learned it. Was our friend Jonathan Hoyt. We worked with him together at a kind of a comic shop sort of place, and that's who introduced it to me. Right around the same time, I actually went out and found it at a rental store back when we had those, and was able to rent it, and yeah, just fell in love immediately. It had everything that I want to see in almost any movie.
Yeah.
So what about Phibes do you find appealing, in terms of what distinguishes it from other horror / comedy, or just even horror in general films for you? What puts this to the top? Because when I asked you, I had in mind what I wanted, what I thought, but when I asked you, okay, what film do you think you would like to cover for Halloween, and you said Phibes, I was like, hallelujah. It just immediately, I was right in tune and in sync with that.
Right. So I used to have a Halloween party every year, and we would kind of Mystery Science Theater horror movies. And this one is perfect for that, where not just, I mean, yes, you're kind of making fun of it, but it's making fun of itself. And I mean, there are cuts in the movie where you can see Vincent Price is trying his damnedest not to laugh, and Volnavia, the assistant.
Volvania.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, Volvania. Mm-hmm.
Where she's trying not to. So anyway, just the throwaway comedy and it's a great horror comedy. And what's hilarious is, had I seen this first before I saw it back in the mid 90s when I saw Seven probably wouldn't have hit as great to me, because part of what was great about Seven is how horrific it is. But this, I don't think Seven was riffing on this, but you can draw parallels to the 7 Deadly Sins and the 10 Plagues of Egypt, and so, but this is played for laughs. Not really. I guess it's horror comedy, so it's horrific, but I don't know. It hit checked all kinds of boxes for me.
Yeah. Actually, I've even seen a couple of articles where people have made that comparison, where Seven probably even got some of their inspiration with the way the horror plays out from Phibes, as well as Saw. Apparently there are some relational scenes in Saw, which I'm not actually generally a fan of those kinds of slasher horror movies. This one's just got a certain level of pizzazz. I mean, and Vincent carries it. I was going to talk about this a little bit later if we were going to get into talking about some trivia and stuff, but one thing I read about was the guy that played Cotton, Joseph Cotton, that played Dr. Berzelius.
Yeah.
He apparently had a really hard time with the script and was really grumpy and not having a great time, and Vincent Price did everything he could to just constantly trying to make him laugh. And sometimes he was laughing, I read, so much that his face makeup would start falling off or getting messed up, which actually lent to the concept of Phibes just putting together this fucked up face,
Right.
But you could tell Vincent's totally hamming it up.
Always having a blast on this.
Which I thought, when I kind of originally was watching this for the past few years and I didn't really read into the making of it, I thought, well, is this a part of Vincent Price's career where he kind of Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood, where he's he's past his prime and he's just being used for this camp horror and he's just like ugh. But that's not what this was at all. Like Vincent Price was like still in his prime and he was just having a fucking good time the whole time, which I thought was cool and you can really see it on screen.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. So terms of background and origin, so what I read was that this concept was originally written by William Goldstein, who the concept for Dr. Phibes came from a horror short story that he wrote that was never published. And then I guess he had enough contacts that he wanted to get this made on film and pitched it. And so it became a film. But he actually put out novels as supplements to this film, and of course the sequel, Dr. Phibes Rises Again. And if you look up Goldstein, this dude is still alive and he's still pimping out the Phibes vibe. Like he's got like 5 novels out and one that just came out not too like many years ago. And he's also like trying to kick around for a concept for a Dr. Phibes revival movie. Like a new movie of like Dr. Phibes in the future or something, and he wants Malcolm McDowell to play Dr. Phibes. So he's even
McDowell's dead too.
You what?
Malcolm McDowell's dead too, isn't he?
I know. That's what's like I found was like really weird because he has like a poster out with Malcolm McDowell as fucking Dr. Phibes, and he just posted this like in May.
Okay, that's weird. I mean, I guess I could be wrong, but I was fairly certain.
No, he's still alive. He's in his.
Really? Well, sorry, Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, he's still in his 80s. That guy's still kicking around.
Wow.
You wouldn't know Dr. Phibes. But anyway, you can find William Goldstein on Facebook. He's got a whole Dr. Phibes page.
Wow.
Yeah, so he wrote a novelization of this movie as well as Dr. Phibes Rises Again, but he's got 2 other novels, one about Dr. Phibes in his early days and another one specifically about Vivania. And then his most recent one that came out is about the automatons.
Which are awesome.
Yeah, which are totally great. But anyway, I just thought that was very interesting. And the concept behind the book was actually way darker. It's not campy horror.
Right.
It is pure, like he takes Dr. Phibes seriously, but when Robert Geist, I guess is, or Foist, Robert Foist, took this script and like rewrote a bunch of it, and his whole intention was just to make something humorous and fun and have a good time with Vincent Price. Straight off of filming Wuthering Heights, I might add, which is interesting.
Yeah, but I understand it was not a very well received version.
Yeah.
Right, but. And I mean, as far as the sequel to Phibes, even, I mean, it's fine, but it's nowhere near as good.
I've actually never seen the sequel.
I mean, it's worth checking out if you're a Phibes fan for sure, but
yeah.
The only other thing I've seen of Foist, or Foyt, however you say his name, I did, when I was younger, I did see his version of the final program, which adapted Michael Moorcock's novel. And good God, is that a bizarre movie. I've never read the actual novel, so I don't know. From what I understand, Michael Moorcock was not much of a fan of the adaptation. Like, didn't think it did a good job. So, but I maybe was too young when I saw it, so it's something if I revisited, maybe I wouldn't think it was as bizarre. But my recollection is that's a messed up, bizarre, not messed up like gross or anything, just a bizarre movie.
Yeah. Actually, Final Program's been on my watch list for about 6 months or so because it's a Jerry Cornelius, Michael Moorcock adaptation. And then I just connected the dots as I was watching Dr. Phibes of like, oh, wait, this is the same dude that directed that. So it's cool to kind of see those correlations.
Right.
So as we walk through the film, like just to kind of like, you know, we gave a brief synopsis, but this film is like just talk about the tone of it and the format. We're basically just watching Phibes actually in the midst of killing all these doctors that he felt like were responsible for his wife. In fact, we don't even see the first kill. It happens off screen.
It's mentioned, yeah, at the scene of the second kill.
Yeah. And so that's basically all the movie is we're watching these kills happen. We're watching Phibes in the midst of his despair over missing his wife and his like anger towards wanting to like get retribution. But we're also seeing, which all of those scenes, first of all, I'm going to say are weird, trippy, dark, heart-wrenching, kind of campy, but they could be taken as like, this is just odd. But then you get these scenes of these inspectors, Inspector Trout and these other like cops, like just goofy as hell, like with magnifying glasses, like sitting on top of a cabinet, like looking for fingerprints, like just weird. Like the cop scenes are, if you're confused about whether or not this is a comedy or not, those cop scenes totally then give it away. Like, oh, this is supposed to be cheeky. This is supposed to be fun.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, yeah, I mean, it's not like it's a situation where Vincent Price is in a different movie where, you know, he's really, it's all serious. And no, I mean, he's had, like we talked about, he's hamming it up. He's having a blast. I don't know if the writers just hated cops, thought cops were incompetent or what, but with the exception of Trout, everybody else seemed like, because his boss is just a blowhard who shows up to babble and then goes out again, and Trout's trying to like figure out, you know, what to do next. Basically, the movie is Trout chasing, like he never really deducts too much. Like basically it's all over. Like Phibes is always 5 steps ahead, and it gets, yeah. I mean, watching his antics are some of my favorite parts of the movie, Trout's. Which, I mean, you know, being the huge Terry Gilliam fan that you are, you appreciated him more in Adventures of Baron Munchausen. But
oh yeah, absolutely. His boss you're talking about, Superintendent Waverly. Autumn and I thought it was hilarious because when he came on, we were like, we need to put closed captioning on because everything that guy said was just like, it's just like they so just got down that like British, Scottish, like Scotland Yard like accent to the T. It was awesome.
Right.
So much fun. Yeah, well, so all the kills are really cool. So the kills are all based upon biblical plagues, but of course the biblical plagues are not actually accurate. So they switched out a few of them just to make sure that, like, because visually they were going to be more spectacular on scene.
Right. Well, and they switched the order too, just to make the ending work.
Yep.
Darkness is actually 9, but I mean, yeah, spoilers. This thing's going to be filled with spoilers, but you should still see this movie. It's worth it.
Oh, yeah. It's 100% worth it. So, off screen, we got Professor Thornton that was killed by bees, and that's supposed to be the plague of boils. Then we've got our next kill, bats, and then frogs, blood, hail, rats, beasts, which that's a whole subject in and of itself. And then locust,
one of my favorite scenes,
death of the firstborn, and then finally darkness. So yeah, what were like notable kills for you? Anything that stood out in particular?
So I've got the ones that I think, so okay, first of all, my favorite thing about the kills actually is the cut scene after each kill when he blow torches the wax statues of that person. Yeah, and there's a skull underneath. That's awesome.
Yeah.
As far as the kills go, it kind of goes back and forth between me thinking this is kind of cool, you know, this is a cool kill, and then there's kills where it's like this is ridiculously funny because or odd, because the third kill, the frog crushing mask, like what was Phibes gonna do if the dude didn't come to him to help him put the mask on?
Right.
Couldn't figure it out, and so that one was, I was like, well, you're lucky. But that being said, that kill, I was like, oh man, like because he's freaking out and he's trying to relay to people what's going on. Everybody's just watching him, thinking because he's at that masked ball. But so I dig that one, but I had that caveat of that's bizarre. The one that makes me laugh in a dark humor way is the nurse's kill, where he uses Brussels sprouts juice to make the locusts eat her fate, eat her.
Oh,
But
the greatest thing is when he's making the Brussels sprout juice, where he just has like all these Brussels sprouts pouring down into this giant container, and then Volvania brings like a separate basket, and then he's nitpicky about those.
he's selected.
Throw those, and I'm gonna put those in. Just
Right.
again, you could just see how fucking good of a time he's having. It's so awesome.
That one was awesome. But probably my favorite is the brass unicorn, the beasts, because it's the it's the after the kill when they're trying to get him off, like, well, we have to spin it, and so they're spinning the giant brass unicorn, and you just see the dude's legs.
And the guy in the lobby is like, "I hear, you gentlemen, keep it down.
We need quiet." Yeah.
Yeah, so for those in the audience that don't, I mean, he literally, for beasts, he catapults a brass unicorn head across the street, even, as soon as the dude opens the door, impales him. It's beautiful. It's brilliant.
But it's a curved horn, so yeah, you can't just pull it straight out. You gotta spin him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think probably the one that I thought was coolest, no pun intended, was the hail ice kill. Like, that was pretty cool on the side of the road. And I mean, I would totally have pulled over for Lanavia as well. Something about 70s cinema and that blue eyeshadow that women would wear. I'm a sucker. I would have pulled over, and I mean, luckily, because that's the thing. The poor guy they're like, he's in shock. The driver. Right. He's laying on the ground, and evidently he's been laying there since the afternoon. But he's in wicked shock. I thought he was dead, but yeah, if you listen to the dialogue, they're like, he's in shock. We're not getting much from him.
Right.
We're not going to help him up either. He's just going to.
The thing that about that scene that really stood out to me is you really get to see Dr. Phibes' car at play, where he has a screen, like each window is basically a screen of his face, either from the back if it's in the rear, or side profiles on the sides, which is just so, it's one of those choices in this movie that's just like, what? That is
right. But oddly enough, a little unsettling to me. I did find that a little creepy, where you're just driving down the road and you look over and you see the profile of a drawing of somebody in a car.
Yeah, very weird. Yeah, I mean, other than not seeing the bees in motion, which I thought was cool, because that probably would have been very difficult to film. They didn't have a ton of money.
Right.
But also just, it was cool that we're in the midst of it. That's already happened, and now we're there's no build up. We're in it from the very beginning of the movie, and I really enjoyed that.
Sure.
Any thoughts regarding the death of the firstborn or the darkness ones at the end?
The darkness was a nice. I mean, it's right up there with the ending of 7, where you're capping it off very nicely to fit the theme of the kills. I thought I liked that. I did. It does. It's both fitting and borderline creepy. Actually, pretty creepy, because he's embalming himself. And at the same time, the humor is there, because as soon as it shuts, the cops are down there like, "Where'd he go?" Well,
right.
Guess he's done, and then just go back upstairs.
Where did he go?
Right. So yeah, the firstborn one. I mean, that was intense, as far as dude having to do surgery on his son, but it did take them way too long, because he was just sitting there. Well, my brother's dead, and he was the firstborn. We're fine.
Right.
And then the cop's like, "What about your son?" Dun dun dun, and they all run, and yeah. So
he knocks out poor Trout. Oh man, the scene, that his apartment. What's his name? I keep thinking Joe Cotton, but Dr. Berzelius's apartment.
Berzelius. Yeah.
Seems like way less 20s than anything else in that movie, and seems very 70s, because this is supposed to take place in 1925. But that
Right.
apartment is like, there's been some LSD in that apartment, like 100 fucking percent, dude. Which
Yeah.
I think is all over this movie. So like favorite moments, favorite things about the movie, other than like the kills, like what are
I
the
kind
things
of
that
touched.
draw
Yeah.
you the most?
I kind of touched on the unicorn, the spinning of the unicorn and the leg spinning is one of my favorite scenes. I actually love when, speaking of Versalius knocking out uh, Trout, and when Trout comes to, and he's like, oh, and then he gets up and he starts to run off to like get to the scene, but he doubles back to get a shot, and then he runs back out again.
That's my boy Trout.
Yep, I
I
love
think
that.
that's hilarious because it's like this guy's kid is kidnapped and he's like, well, nothing we can do about it now. Might as well have a drink. I'm like,
Right?
fuck yeah, boy.
Yeah, it's like, well, can't let the scotch go to waste, so I'm gonna finish this. Bam. I love that. I don't know. I like a lot of the silliness when they get to Phibes' scene, like the scene of everything, and Phibes is escaping, and his assistant is tearing everything apart. And they run up, and she's already cut holes in that tapestry, and they stick their heads out in the bodies of it. So I mean, there's just a lot of manic nuttiness happening at the end that I like.
Yeah.
And then, of course, closing on Somewhere Over the Rainbow, the weird organ version of that to like,
So odd.
yeah.
So odd.
What about you?
Well, so for me, the thing that sticks out the most of just my whole favorite aspect is just the setting of his lair. I think he has some of the greatest. He probably has like the greatest lair of any like villain or monster or creature of like any film to me because it has that sort of psychedelic 70s quality to it in a way. You've got this like these weird velvety kind of backgrounds, like Art Deco sort of thing. The Clockwork Wizards, which is his band,
So
playing in the background. I mean, it's everything. Like, I'm not gonna kid you. Like, that's everything I always wanted in a setting for when I used to trip LSD all the time in college. Like that would like I would have loved like a place like that to just be in because it's just so wild and weird and fascinating. But
so bizarre.
I love his scenes where he's just sitting there looking at his wife. You know,
Yeah.
like he's just in the lower part of his layer because it's like two levels. So he'll like the organ will lower when he's playing, oftentimes, and he'll just be sitting there and talking to his wife. And actually, I thought those scenes were really sweet. I love the lighting and just the aura around her,
Right.
and just the weird scenes where like they're like we'll see the cops like trying to figure stuff out, and then there'll just be these weird cuts where like him and Volvania are dancing, or she'll just come and bring him some roses, and then she's just standing there with this weird cape on while the band is playing, and that's it. Like these weird vignettes that just are like dreamlike, odd. Like those are the things about the movie that are like for me the most fascinating. I love the humor. I love everything else about it.
Right.
Those are the parts that really drew me from the very beginning. I love that shit through and through. So if part two is full of that kind of stuff a lot, like I'm 100% in.
I again check it out, but no, you're not going to be. It's not quite as because to your point, I did have a note that I dig. I mean, we have a shared love of 70s cinema, but the fact that this is only a 90-minute movie, like 94 minutes,
Yeah.
and I would bet a solid. I mean, it's got to be close to 20% of this movie is those long sequences where he's just playing the organ and you're watching her dance by herself and like the clockwork people are moving and there's nothing. It's just a slow chill in this world, and that sort of stuff doesn't happen nowadays. Like you got to keep it snappy and go. And so I agree with that. I'm not coming at it from the same place as you, but just relaxing in that madness is a lot of fun in this movie.
Yeah. That's an aesthetic of older movies that I really enjoy. It reignited my love for 70s cinema, and right after watching it, I introduced Autumn to it for the first time this past week, and she was just like, "What? Like, just what is this?" But loved it, you know.
Right.
But like immediately on our movie list, it was just like looking through all of these like 70s films that we just haven't seen in forever or been wanting to see. Just there is something about, you know, and some people like it, some people don't, but a film that just kind of takes that time to just be in a person's madness or in a person's world without with it being interesting, but also not having to be directly part of the plot, like so plot driven. Like it's just like you knew they were just sitting around and like, let's just film a scene where the two of you are dancing together or this and that. Like I doubt that stuff was probably like so much into the script. Like they were just kind of experimenting and having fun. And at least I hope so. That's the kind of thing I really enjoy. Especially
Right.
if it's ad hoc. So
Yeah.
overall, what would you if I don't know. I don't know how you rate movies. I sometimes like to rate movies from with a school grade rather than like a 1 through 10. So like A, B, C, D.
Right. Right.
But how do you like to grade things first of all, or do you do stars? And what would you rate it?
Well, so we've got that group, Facebook group of horror enthusiasts, and I typically do it 1 out of 5, whatever. If it's an axe murdering movie, I'll do 1 out of 5 axes or whatever. Basically, 1 out of 5 is what I do. But I mean, this is your show. Let's do letters. Let's do grades.
All right. Well, go for it. What do you think?
Oh man. All right. Let's see. Well, my knee jerk is to be A, but if I break it down, because a lot of that is not necessarily the movie's merits as much as there is some nostalgia, a factor, even though, I mean, yeah, I got it 20 years ago, but it hit, like, there's all these memories attached to it, showing it to people, showing it to, watching it multiple times out the gate. So if I take that out, and just as it's on its own merits, I'd still actually, for the stuff that I dig, you know what? No, screw it. I'm sticking with A.
Yeah, I'm with an A too. A lot of movies, even some of my favorites, will usually kind of just be at a B. It gets to an A when it's at like a high rewatchability factor.
Right, that's a huge factor.
That's yeah. So there's a lot of movies I love and I think are just brilliantly executed, but can I rewatch it? Like, is it too tough to rewatch? Is it too?
Right.
That'll probably usually lower it to a B. But this hits all the bells and whistles for me, and it's an A. And honestly, I think it's a movie I could show to most anyone. And I actually think the way people's humor is evolving, I think people would enjoy this more and more. Which it didn't do well originally,
Right.
and it's only like the cult following of it has only kind of been growing and growing and getting bigger. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a long-lasting movie for sure, man. Totally.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been around 50 plus years, so.
Out of curiosity, I mean, I love Vincent Price. I will always honor his movie, but him as a person. But I would say that like Terry Gilliam, what Terry Gilliam is for me, Vincent Price is for you, and that he's almost godlike. What would you consider your favorite role of his, other than Michael Jackson's Thriller?
I don't know that I'd put him. I'm a big fan, don't get me wrong, but I don't know that I'd put him at the same level that you do Gilliam. Like, Gilliam is huge for you. Because I mean, most of Vincent Price's movies I haven't even seen. He's done so many.
Yeah.
But like I said, let's see. I'm gonna look at his IMDb real quick because off the cuff, I'm not coming up with anything other than House on Haunted Hill. And like I said at the beginning of this, I kind of, for my all-time favorite, certainly the ones I've watched the most, it's PHIBES and Haunted Hill.
Haunted Hill is fucking great.
Yeah. And I mean, he's only a bit part in Edward Scissorhands, but arguably my favorite part.
I will say, outside of movies though, every Halloween you have a tradition where you play a Vincent Price record.
That's true.
And that is actually one of the cooler Vincent Price experiences.
1 minute later.
Funny you should mention that.
Nice.
That is it.
That's such a cool cover.
Hornbook for Witches. This you can actually listen to on YouTube, somebody playing the album, and I highly recommend it.
Nice.
This actually, yeah, this may be my all-time favorite Vincent Price project,
Yeah.
which is maybe sacrilege, and he's maybe turning over in his grave, but I love it.
I don't think so. I think he would appreciate that for sure. That one of my best memories of my kids being young and doing trick-or-treating with them, you and Lauren came over one time for that, and you guys hung out while the kids threw all their candy on the floor, and you guys put on that record. And it was when our living room was so covered in spider webs, like you had to like crawl through to even like get to anything. It was great.
It was. That was a cool night. But yeah,
Good times.
that's an
Good
amazing.
times. Well, man, thanks so much. What plans you got tonight for Halloween?
Oh man, sure. I'll get into either. I'm gonna go get into some kind of trouble, or I'm gonna make a cocktail and watch some Phibes.
That's right. That's right. Same here. So, I love it. I love it. It's my favorite night of the year. I wish my kids were still a little bit small so I could say, hey, nobody has to go to school the next day, because that was our special treat. Was no matter what kind of day of Halloween fell on throughout the year, you always got the day off after, so you could stay up all night and just watch horror movies and gorge on candy, which is what we're gonna do. All right, brother. Thank you so much for joining me. Everybody have a happy Halloween, and we'll catch you next time. Keep it psycho.